Bureau of Investigation. Apparently, they have a secret Air Force. So, I mean, it's not really something that's amazingly, some sort of amazing revelation that, wow, the FBI has an Air Force? Yeah, I mean, come on. We all knew that it was going to happen. But yeah, the FBI apparently does have its own secret air wing of some sort that they use to do stuff. Well, the FBI's secret Air Force was watching the streets of Baltimore, according to Ars Technica, which you'd think would be far outside their jurisdiction, but the FBI does as the FBI wills. So as tensions eased and protests continued this past weekend in Baltimore, according to Ars Technica, a small squadron of aircraft circled neighborhoods affected by the riots and other violence of April 27th, providing Baltimore City Police with an eye in the sky to monitor the protests and other possible criminal activity, as an FBI official told the Washington Post. Now, it seems that the Baltimore PD doesn't seem to understand what a curfew is also, because they arrested somebody inside their own house for violating curfew. I'm not sure how that works. And also, I mean, who cares about curfew anyway, right? I mean, curfew, come on. There's a curfew. Okay, I'll put it this way. There's a curfew where I live, and nobody follows it. If you're under the age of 18, you're supposed to be back in your house by, I think it's 10:30 in Ringgold. Nobody ever follows that. Nobody. I mean, trust me, I've broken that law many, many times, right? I mean, it's far past statute of limitations by this time, I'm sure. But I mean, we were like 13 years old walking around downtown Ringgold, 2 in the morning. So there's no way to enforce that. Really, the curfew is just something that you can add on as an extra charge after you've arrested them for something else. You know, loitering and violation of curfew. It's just more money for them to make. Well, tensions eased, obviously, and the protests are not nearly as violent as they were before, but there were aircraft. And these aircraft, or at least some of them, were part of the FBI's secret surveillance Air Force, small planes with sensors perfected for battlefield intelligence in Iraq and Afghanistan that have quietly seen service all over the country. The aircraft, equipped with high-definition day and night surveillance systems, gave police a way to spot curfew breakers on the streets from the sky. Now, breaking curfew doesn't really seem like a big deal to me. You know, I mean, you have kind of a right to travel. You can walk around however you want, and they're demanding that you stay in your house. How are they going to enforce that? What are they going to do? Like arrest you for walking? That seems a little bit silly. You know, what's the deal with this curfew nonsense? I keep hearing about it too. They had one in Ferguson. They've had them in New York City before, where it's you would think that it's sort of a symbolic thing and not really enforceable, but they are actually trying to enforce this curfew. So in response to an inquiry from Ars Technica, an FBI spokesperson said during the recent unrest, the FBI provided aircraft to the Baltimore Police Department for the purpose of providing aerial imagery of possible criminal activity, or analytics gathering, more like. The aircraft were specifically used to assist in providing high-altitude observation of potential criminal activity to enable rapid response by police officers on the ground. The spokesman added that the flights were not there to monitor lawfully protected First Amendment activity, and any FBI aviation support to local law enforcement agencies must receive high-level approvals. So, enforcing a curfew seems to criminalize what's otherwise something that's not a crime at all. Walking down the street now becomes a crime thanks to a curfew. I mean, what if I have to go to the store to buy some milk, you know, and there's a curfew in place? You know, a lot of people don't actually have cars, so it's not like we can just hop in our cars and drive wherever we will, because there are people, especially in larger cities such as Baltimore, who don't actually have cars, who have to walk down to the corner store to get their groceries. So if there's a curfew in place, and what if there's an emergency too? I'll get tackled and beaten up because I needed to go get some chips or something. I mean, come on. Captain Eric, boy, it's a Polish name, and I apologize to all of my Polish friends because I do have some, because I'm very, very bad at pronouncing Polish names. Kowalczyk, I'm wanting to say. A Baltimore City Police Department spokesman told Ars Technica that the department had received multiple media requests for information on the flights and will be making a statement on the use of the aircraft this afternoon through social media. That statement has not yet been posted, and as soon as we know about it, we'll tell you about it, because there's not yet been any sort of even real acknowledgement publicly that this aircraft was flying around. While the FBI does acknowledge the existence of its surveillance fleet, the ownership of these small unmarked aircraft is well obscured for operational security reasons, OPSEC. They seldom post flight plans, with records for the aircraft seen over Baltimore having only reported flights last month in Virginia and Florida. The planes, some of which were spotted flying low over the city by residents and tracked by flight watchers on the internet, are registered to a collection of aircraft leasing corporations and shell companies, I should say, to hide their true purpose from prying eyes. So, does the FBI get these via contract? Do they own them through the bizarre venture capital wing of the CIA? Where do they obtain this aircraft? I mean, obviously, the federal agencies such as the BLM or the well, that is the Bureau of Land Management, such as the BLM and the Forestry Service and such. I mean, they all need to use aircraft in order to look over forests and wide ranges and that sort of thing. So you can understand the use of aircraft by the feds for that purpose, although I don't agree with it. I can understand it. It does make sense. I just don't agree with the feds doing much of anything. But it's not, I'm not sure how I understand that the feds need to be flying airplanes around to make sure nobody's breaking the law. I mean, obviously, law enforcement's job is to enforce the law after it has been broken. So they're going around, like, going out of their way to find people who are just walking along on the street, it seems. On April 29th, a Cessna 206H registered to National Aircraft Leasing Corporation circled overhead for hours at about 3,500 feet, flying repetitively over western Baltimore. On the nights of April the 30th, May 1st, and May 2nd, another aircraft, a Cessna model 182T. I know there are people who fly who listen, and I hope they know what I'm talking about. A Cessna model 182T registered to a company called NG Research in Bristow, Virginia, flew over the same areas at a similar low altitude. Also on May 1st and May 2nd, an unidentified Cessna Citation V jet or Citation 5 possible, jet made similar nighttime flights orbiting Baltimore at the relatively low altitudes for a jet aircraft of 6,400 feet and 9,400 feet based on records from Flight Radar 24. So they have a map as well of all of the aircraft flights, and it appears that they're circling around the area of the interstate and close to the bay there in Baltimore. I'm not too familiar with the layout of Baltimore City. I've only passed through it on my way to Canada, but it's very strange what's going on over there in Baltimore. Lots of federal activity, and I wonder if this is being used as a very clever opportunity to gather information on different groups of people, to see how they act under duress and that sort of thing. Or maybe it's to monitor the police to ensure that they do a good job, and if they don't, how to instruct them on how to do a better job and how to be more brutal or something. I don't know. There's been speculation that these aircraft actually carried advanced digital surveillance gear from Persistent Surveillance Systems, a company that's previously conducted testing in Baltimore, as well as Dayton, Ohio, and other cities. But given the time of day and the FBI's acknowledgement of its aircraft support for Baltimore police, these aircraft likely carried stabilized forward-looking infrared and electro-optical sensor systems similar to those purchased by the FBI in 2010 from L3 Westcam. By the way, forward-looking infrared and electro-optical sensor systems, sometimes called FLIR. If you hear somebody talking about a FLIR camera, that's what they're referring to. It's forward-looking infrared. So FLIR is sometimes what they call it, FLIR. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as that. They're actually really, really popular with news crews and such. If you want a stabilized camera, most of the time it's going to be a FLIR camera. I don't know who manufactures them, but that's what they'll usually use. They're really expensive. So you'll usually only see these being used by the higher end, the national news agencies and such. Smaller news agency like, the TV channels we have around here probably won't have FLIR cameras, but they usually do have something a little bit similar, not quite as stabilized. So that's how they get really steady helicopter shots. Actually, it's how they use FLIR for that. It was originally made for the military, but now it's been lots of good use has been made of it for civilian uses. The FBI has been using aircraft for surveillance since 1938, when a plane was used to spot the payoff package for an extortion attempt as it was thrown from a train. And infrared sensors have been used since at least the 1990s, because infrared has been around since the 1940s. Actually, the Germans used infrared cameras or infrared scopes for their guns. Very rarely, special forces in the German military used infrared optics, and we used it very limitedly in Korea and Vietnam because it was a very heavy, very hefty sort of thing back then. It used a big backpack-sized battery pack. But nowadays, from Gulf War on, We've been using infrared like crazy, like night vision goggles. Everybody seems to be outfitted with those infrared scopes of some sort. Everybody has infrared in some form or another. I mean, you can go out and buy infrared optics right now. So infrared is expensive still, but not for a government which has seemingly unlimited funds. The FBI has been using this aircraft for a very, very long time, though. By 2003, the FBI had over 80 aircraft, including a handful of Night Stalker infrared surveillance planes. The latest aircraft could also carry electronic eavesdropping gear, including Stingray devices or what's called a dirt box, a cell phone interception system. Which is another thing that is a little bit troubling, is that these systems can be used to gather information from anybody, regardless of whether they're acting in a nefarious manner or not. Because surely there are people who live in Baltimore who are just average, everyday guys who want to be left alone. Such as myself. Think about it this way, or such as you too. Think about it this way: there's massive protests in Chattanooga. There's looting, there's rioting, who knows what else. But I'm not taking part in that. You're not taking part in that. But our cell phone records are being captured anyway because we're in the area of disturbance. That's how it would work. So that's sort of the similar situation that they have going on in Baltimore. If these dirt boxes are being used, if these cell site simulator devices are being used, then the cell phone information of everybody is being swept up for analytical purposes, for studying purposes, to study how cell phones are used in times of trouble when Mother Mary comes to you. So a dirtbox cell phone interception system might be used down there on the ground. An FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force team recently took an FBI aircraft with optical and radio sensors to the UK and flew accompanied by RAF pilots, that's the Royal Air Force, of course, trying to intercept phone calls from individuals tied to the British member of ISIS known as Jihadi John. Jihadi John, I thought, was already in Syria, so I'm not sure what they were doing there, but who knows? Yeah, the ISIS thing is yet another boogeyman that the feds have for us there. Who knows what the actual threat is, but they really like to tout that one, don't they? So it's kind of a messed up situation what we have in Baltimore, and it's not just a problem where there's looters and there's rioters. Lots of wrongdoing is being done on both sides. I'm not sure how the proportions are. Is it the rioters are doing much more harm than the police are, or the police are doing much more harm than the rioters are? I don't know how it's proportioned, but certainly wrongdoing is being done on both sides, because obviously messing up a police car, a police cruiser, is not the just thing to do, and looting a business is not the just thing to do. Not that all the rioters have been, or not that all the protesters, I should say, have been doing that, because we have seen peaceful protests, which are protected under the First Amendment. But we've also been seeing police activity that's both good and bad. We've seen the police acting in a just manner, and we've seen the police doing really stupid stuff, like biting a guy, for one. I don't know if you read about that. There was a case where in Baltimore, a policeman bit somebody in the testicles. A little bit weird. Different situation, though, not relating to the riots. And we had a situation where police were arresting people in their houses for violation of curfew. And you know what I think about curfew? I think it's a lot of nonsense. Curfew, who cares about curfew, man? Big deal. So they arrested people in their houses without warrants, by the way, breaking into people's houses for violating curfew in Baltimore. So a lot of wrongdoing is going on both sides. You can't really justify one side or the other. On the one hand, the rioters have the idea of being against police brutality. I don't think the rioters do, but the protesters have the cause of being against police brutality. The police have the cause of upholding what they determine to be rule of law, and by way of doing so, they beat up people. I'm not sure how that works, and that's sort of the situation that's going on in Baltimore. It's very complex, and it's really more than we could cover in even an hour. The situation in Baltimore is something very complicated, and I think unless you're there on the ground witnessing every single event that goes on, you can't really be passing judgment about it. Well, this is Hot News Talk Radio. That's AM 1240, and we are everywhere. You can listen live on hotnewstalkradio.com, download the TuneIn app, and search for Hot News Talk Radio. Hot News Talk Radio is on Twitter, where you report the world of sides. That's AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. And you can save half off now. Go to hotnewstalkradio.com and click on the half off link for great deals. That's Hot News Talk Radio. It saves you money. AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. There's a lot of different ways to listen to us, and hotnewstalkradio.com is one of the best ways. You can also get the TuneIn app and search for Hot News Talk Radio. And on Saturday at 12 o'clock, we're going to be running a special show where we're going to be showcasing a lot of different items that we have for at least half off on Hot News Talk Radio. So be sure to listen in 12 o'clock noon on Saturday this week. Saturday, Hot News Talk Radio. Be sure to listen in. We're going to be covering a lot of different deals. You can get half off on a lot of different items. That's Hot News Talk Radio, 12 o'clock noon, right here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, or on the website on hotnewstalkradio.com. The Patriot Act is not something that I am in favor of, and I'm not sure how anybody could be in favor of the Patriot Act. It's one of the most misleading acts that's ever been passed in the United States Congress. It's amazing that the populace was duped into believing that it would ever help anything. Of course, when there's a boogeyman, people will do anything to combat it. And in this case, the boogeyman was international terror groups, and the solution was to spy on everybody, regardless of whether or not they're a terrorist. Somehow people rally behind that. Well, the Patriot Act is not very patriotic at all. In fact, it's not patriotic in the least. Although maybe it is. It's very nationalist, and nationalism is a heightened sense of patriotism, so maybe it is kind of patriotic. The phone metadata spying is not authorized by the Patriot Act, says an appeals court. So the National Security Agency's bulk telephone metadata collection program, exposed by Edward Snowden, is not authorized by the Patriot Act, says the federal appeals court on Thursday. The decision by the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit said the snooping program exceeds the scope of what Congress has authorized. Both the Bush and the Obama administrations have cited the Patriot Act, adopted a month after the 2001 terror attacks, as the legal basis authorizing the spying that began in 2007. The lengthy ruling comes as the section of the Patriot Act in question expires at month's end, and lawmakers are set to renew it outright with a few limitations. Election program never been intercepted to authorize, or rather interpreted, I should say, never been interpreted to authorize anything approaching the breadth and sweeping surveillance at issue here, the appeals court wrote. Now, note that we would have no idea what's going on here if it were not for the Snowden leaks. If Edward Snowden hadn't leaked the information that he had, we would have no idea that this was going on. So it's very important that we have people such as Edward Snowden and, of course, Bradley Manning and Julian Assange to carry the information, whereas a lot of different news agencies would probably just not want it because they would see it as harmful to national security. Well, maybe national security isn't actually worth keeping out there if it means that it infringes on everyone's liberties. If national security, if I hate it when I lose my words, man. If hindering, or rather infringing, that's the word. Don't you hate that? If infringing everybody's rights is the way to maintain national security, then I don't think I actually want national security. Because if the only way to maintain national security is to just get rid of everybody's rights and throw that out the window, or rather cease to recognize everybody's rights and continue to infringe upon them, if that's how you uphold national security, then I don't want your national security. So the statutes to which the government's been pointing aren't actually valid for the justification of the phone metadata spying. The court noted that the Patriot Act gives the government wide powers to acquire, I should say, all types of private records on Americans as long as they are relevant to an investigation. But the government is going too far when it comes to acquiring via a subpoena the metadata of every telephone call made to and from the United States, the court says. So then this makes everyone relevant to an investigation. So the way this works now is that the way the federal government has this structured is everyone is now a suspect. Everyone is now relevant to an investigation for counterterrorism purposes. So this makes every U.S. citizen, except for the ones who work for the federal government, a potential terrorist, be it domestic or foreign or what have you. So then this gives the government free rein to spy on just about everyone for their vain purposes of maintaining national security, aka maintaining the pocketbooks of many contractors who offer up technologies for maintaining national security. It's a very, very evil system that we have in place here. And the people who would try to justify it are obviously not in favor of liberty. You know, this just should go without saying that the people who are in favor of these systems don't understand how liberty is supposed to work. They don't understand the very concept of liberty and personal freedoms in self-government. They don't understand these concepts. They've been brought up in this system. They've been coddled by this system that's supposed to provide everything, including security, to the people, when in actuality, that's not really what they're supposed to do. If infringing on everybody's rights is the way to maintain security, then I don't want security. It's as simple as that. I mean, after all, Benjamin Franklin even said it. One of the founding fathers of the country we all live in here even said that if you sacrifice security for liberty, or liberty for security, pardon me, then you deserve neither. And it seems that they are begging us to sacrifice our liberty in exchange for security. That's not the proper way to go about things, but it just shows you quite a lot. when the people who are supposed to be sort of the successors to the founding fathers, in a sense, they're successors to the old government, are infringing on all of our rights and totally going against all the principles that the founders had. That sort of shows you something there, doesn't it? Where these people don't actually value our personal liberties, because they always have a but at the end of every right which we have. They'll say, well, you do have a First Amendment right, but as soon as they say that word, don't listen to them anymore, because they say, well, you do have a First Amendment right, but, or you do have a Second Amendment right, but, or you have the right against self-incrimination, but, or you have the right against searches and seizures, but. It doesn't work that way.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode. What kind of fool do you think I am? You think I know nothing of
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. Hi, this is your computer speaking. I don't feel so well. It's like I've come down with a bug, and I'm getting slower.
Affordable Computers. We fix sick computers. Your hometown guys at Affordable Computers will repair your PC in half the time of the big boys at an affordable price. No tricks, no gimmicks, no computer speak technobabble. Just good, quick, and courteous affordable service and repairs. Want to affordably supercharge your PC? Affordable Computers on Highway 58. Affordable Computers hand builds all desktops in-house. If you're looking for a better-than-new refurb laptop, $150 will get you a Dell or another name brand at Affordable Computers. Affordable Computers, Highway 58, between Arby's and Taco Bell. Also Fort O, Battlefield Parkway, near Holcomb's. Affordable Computers, we service what we sell. Call 499-1975. That's 499-1975.
Wow, this is amazing. I'm feeling great. Supercharged.
Do you feel better outside your home or business than in? Indoor air quality is important. Mildew, mold, smoke, water, and rodent damage are prime causes of poor indoor air quality. Ducts Indoor Air Professionals, better known as Duct Busters, cleans HVAC systems using 127 definable Duct Busters steps. Let Mark Thompson address the indoor air quality at your business to help reduce employee illnesses. Prevent fires by cleaning your dryer vents. Mark and his parents, Dick and Joan Thompson, have been building our local economy and helping local people with HVAC systems 16 years. Ducts Indoor Air Professionals. Call 876-9907. 876-9907. Ducks. Call now.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
You love your hometown. Are you interested in free markets, in local economy? Do you hope that Chattanooga can survive the next meltdown, the next chain of disasters in the national economy? What's the best way to live out the ideals of self-government and self-determination? Join me, David Toulis, weekdays 1 to 3.
News Talk 1240.
Love your neighbor, buy local.
News Talk 1240.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Fox News Radio. I'm Lillian Wu. The new attorney general commenting on the request by the mayor of Baltimore for an investigation following rioting triggered by the death of a man hurt while in police custody.
I intend to have a decision in the coming days.
Loretta Lynch in her first appearance before Congress since being sworn in. Tornadoes ripping across the Midwest, leaving at least one person dead. Authorities say an Oklahoma woman apparently drowned after taking cover in an underground storm shelter that later flooded. And a first court appearance for the St. Louis man accused of killing a college student.
Taylor Clark, who went missing days ago while trying to sell his car on Craigslist.
The major case squad has arrested Michael Gordon. He is an African-American male, 24 years of age.
Florissant, Missouri Police Captain Tim Fagan says Gordon arranged the meeting to look at Taylor's car in the parking lot of a truck driving school where Gordon worked.
Fox Radio's Jeff Manasso. Fox News. We report, you decide.
Something that's worth noting is that you probably shouldn't trust anybody. And why do I say that? Well, the reason is anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Now, that's not something that's applicable to you only after arrest. Anything you've said or done at any point in time within earshot of a police officer or a recording device can and probably will be used against you in a court of law. Now, there are border guards who are not very well trained in the law, and they're not very well trained in much of anything, and they probably can't run more than 5 feet without getting hypothermia and without breaking down into hyperventilation, not hypothermia, hyperventilation. Then I don't really trust those guys to do much of anything. And it's good because I'm not a huge fan of securing the border anyway. So if these guys are very bad at it, then that's, more power to them. But it's kind of funny when you have law enforcement officers, so-called, who don't actually know how the law works. Now, this can work in your favor if you do know how the law works, because then they've very blatantly infringed on your rights, and you can use that in court later. But in one particular case I was reading about, actually, they had video footage of it. A border guard said that you don't have the right to remain silent until after you've been arrested. Well, no, that's not true. You can not say anything. You don't have to say anything when you're being questioned by an officer. You don't have to say anything. In fact, you never are obligated to say anything at any point. You don't have to say anything. It's pretty easy, actually. This is a very simple concept. Don't say anything. Well, the LA cops don't need to say anything either. They're not going to be disclosing license plate reader data, says an appeals court. So 2 legal activist groups, the ACLU and the Electronic Frontier Foundation, have lost their appeal in a public records lawsuit filed against the Los Angeles Police Department and the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department regarding license plate reader data. The Electronic Frontier Foundation and the American Civil Liberties Union of Southern California, or ACLU SoCal, have sued those law enforcement agencies to gain access to 1 week's worth of LPR data as a way to better understand this surveillance technology. After losing in Los Angeles Superior Court last August, the Electronic Frontier Foundation and the ACLU SoCal appealed the court's decision and was handed down on Wednesday. Both agencies, like many others nationwide, use these specialized cameras to scan cars and compare them at incredible speeds to a hot list of stolen or wanted vehicles. In some cases, that data is kept for weeks, months, or even years. Handing over such large volumes of records by a California law enforcement agency is not without precedent. Earlier this year, Ars Technica obtained 4.6 million license plate reader records collected by the police in Oakland over 4 years, and learned that just 0.16% of those reads were hits. It also turned out that such data is incredibly revelatory, because they were even able to find the city block where a member of the city council lives using nothing but that database, a related data visualization tool, and the license plate number. So it's not very hard to use this information for very nefarious purposes. Now, license plate reader information can be useful, and there are certain uses for it that you might argue, where, say, there's been a hit and run, and the officer tends to be in the area, or happens to be in the area, and the license plate of the person who was in the hit and run is captured. So that information can be used. There are precedents for it to be used. There are reasons for this technology to exist. But it seems like this is, again, creating a suspect out of everybody. And it seems that, in the same attitude I have, where I say you shouldn't trust anybody, including and especially police, they don't seem to trust anybody when it comes to the citizenry, the populace. They also don't trust anybody. And maybe it's only fair, since I don't trust them, that they don't trust me. But it does seem to create a rather bizarre climate where everyone is treated as a suspect instead of being treated as, innocent until proven guilty. So they're presumed to be innocent of any crime until proven guilty, but we're going to collect evidence against you as though you're a suspect regardless. That seems to be a little bit contradictory. You're innocent until proven guilty, but we're still going to collect evidence on you anyway. The judge in the initial court ruling found that the law enforcement agencies could withhold license plate reader records, which include plate numbers, dates, times, GPS locations, through a particular exemption under the California Public Records Act that allows investigatory records to be kept private. The Court of Appeal of the State of California, 2nd Appellate District, Division 3, agreed. So they came out with a very long statement. The judges also noted that the scope of the amount of data collected under the license plate reader system is, quote, apart, unquote, from cases that have been addressed by other California courts, I should say. But they concluded that such a distinction was irrelevant to whether or not such records constituted an investigation. So what they're saying here is that because records are still being put into this record system, the whole database is still an ongoing investigation. Basically, it's being treated as such. It's still an ongoing thing. So this means now that you can't get any information at all from these records under the particular California law. Of course, the judge is seemingly being very open in his definition of what an ongoing investigation is. Not surprising. He says, "We are therefore disappointed with the ruling and believe it's a very bad precedent for public access to law enforcement records," says Jennifer Lynch, an attorney with the Electronic Frontier Foundation, saying, "Although more than 99% of the millions of ALPR records collected on drivers in Los Angeles every week are never linked to any criminal or vehicle investigation, the California Court of Appeal held LAPD and the LA Sheriff's Department could withhold these records as investigative records. So despite the fact that these records will probably never be used or are probably never linked to any sort of criminal investigation, they're still going to be treated as investigative records. So information is being collected against you if you're in LA or any other area which uses LPRs. Evidence is being collected against you despite you having never done anything wrong. That seems to be a little bit, I don't want to use the word unfair, but I mean it is, but it seems to be a little bit tyrannical, you might say. It seems to be a little bit tyrannical, where you have this information that's being used against you, even though you've actually done nothing wrong, and information is being collected against you, even though you've done nothing wrong. But it's not just in this particular case that this is happening. You have to keep it in mind. It's not just license plate reader information that's being collected as information against you. It's also cell phone records. It's also cell phone records that are collected from the companies, which they don't have to get a search warrant to get. It's also your social security number. All your medical records are now digitized. They can be used against you at some point. You have a record of you. You have what some people call an avatar, that is the metadata behind you. Now, there's you as the person who's listening right now, and there's me as a person who's speaking to you right now. You know, that's me. Who you're hearing right now is me. I am myself. I am Russell. But I am not the records which are being kept against me, or which are being held against my will, essentially. I have information that's being held hostage that I can't have purged, that's just always being in record, even though it's not regarding any sort of criminal offense or anything like that. There's always information that's being collected and could potentially be used against us as evidence, but isn't presently. It's not part of any investigation. It's just being collected. So we have information on basically anything we ever do. You know, you walk down the street, there's probably cameras there. You walk down the street and there's probably auditory devices being put up all around. I mean, think about it. They have these devices that they're wanting to put up for gunshot detection, which has already been proven to be used to collect information on conversations walking down the street. It sounds like the rantings of some paranoid guy who's writing with his own blood on the walls. You know, that's what it sounds like. When you talk about some of these things, it sounds like you're just crazy. But really, it's not us that's crazy. It's the system that's crazy when you think about it. It's been set up by power-mad individuals, power-mad senators who want another bid for Congress, power-mad people in contractors' offices, and power-mad people in the military-industrial complex who are only interested in lining their own pocketbooks and getting somewhere higher up in the political ladder. That's really what it's all about for these people. It doesn't matter to them that there's some sort of right being infringed. It doesn't matter to them. They don't care about that. Why would they? They were given no reason to care about individual rights, liberties, whatever. They don't care. They have no incentive to, because all these operations go by and all these operations take place, and nobody actually really complains in any meaningful way to the people who are supposed to be the lawmakers, the people who are supposed to be somewhat in charge of these things. Nobody really complains to them in any meaningful way, so there's really no reason for them to care. There's this apathy on the side of everyone, including myself. I'm guilty of this as well. There's this apathy where nobody really complains to the people who are in charge of this. They just sort of grumble amongst themselves and say, well, this is how it's going to be, or, well, it's necessary to collect the next Boston bomber, you know, even though the Boston Marathon bombing still happened regardless of the data collection taking place. So really that point is irrelevant. But you see, we have this climate now, societally, where we're just willing to sort of set aside all of those things and say, well, you know, freedom isn't free, or we're willing to set aside all these different things which are constantly infringing on our rights, and we just say, well, you know, it's necessary for a free society. How is it necessary for a free society to infringe on everyone's rights? I'm not sure I understand that. How is it necessary for a free society? I can't say that. How is it necessary for a free society to spy on everyone's phone records? How is it necessary for a free society to spy on everyone's license plates, to collect all that information? How is it necessary for a free society to constantly keep metadata records and to wiretap everybody's phones in case they might possibly at some point want to commit some act of terror against the United States? That's not a free society. That's a propped up society. That's a tyrannical society. That's not free. You see, so many people say that, well, we have the freest nation on earth. Well, that might be, but I sure would hate to see what it's like in other places if this is the freest society on earth, because we aren't really that free when it comes right down to it. There's a lot of different things that we just cannot do. There's a lot of, such as be private. You cannot have a private conversation anymore. You just can't. There's no way. You'd have to be in a lead-lined box that's inside a Faraday cage that's out in the middle of the desert, that also is under a giant umbrella, that's also occurring during Aurora Borealis, that's also occurring during a thunderstorm, that's also occurring during periods of heavy sunspots, to ever have a true private conversation. Otherwise, there's no such thing as a private conversation, because there's always something listening at some point, or that could be listening at some point. That's not a free society. That's a paranoid society. That's not free. That's tyranny. That's not free. That's some terrible Huxley Orwellian society where there's always the benevolent state that's listening to you. You see, that's not free. That's an illusion of freedom. That's an illusion of freedom, because they tell you all day, oh, listen, you're free. You can do whatever you want. It's a free country. Start your own business, but you got to pay. Start your own business, but you have to follow these specific guidelines. That's not freedom. That's controlled capitalism. That's a controlled society, not a free one. You see, that's how it works. There's anarchy on the side of the government, where the people in government are acting without law because they don't care about it. They're given no reason to. Whereas we are always held to the standard of rule of law. They're always yelling about rule of law. You must follow rule of law, even though the people who are supposedly in power, if you want to call it that, don't actually do that. So they're the true anarchists, not us. It's a very strange situation. Well, it's not always for the bad. And in fact, actually, you can listen to us on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240. That's Hot News Talk Radio, and we are everywhere. Listen live on Hot News Talk Radio at hotnewstalkradio.com. Download the TuneIn Radio app and search for Hot News Talk Radio on your smartphone. That's Hot News Talk Radio on Twitter as well, where you report the world decides. AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. And you can save half off right now. Go to hotnewstalkradio.com and click on the half off link for great deals. Hot News Talk Radio saves you money. That's AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. You can check us out right there, hotnewstalkradio.com. Click on the great deals button, and you can, or rather, click on the half off button, and you can see all the great deals we have where items are being sold for at least half off here on Hot News Talk Radio. And be sure to listen to us at 12 o'clock on Saturday. That's 12 o'clock on Saturday, right here on Hot News Talk Radio. We're running a special show. We're going to be covering all the different deals we have right here on Hot News Talk Radio. Well, in a rare move, Silicon Valley's county government has actually killed Stingray acquisitions. Now, in Santa Clara, the County Board of Supervisors has halted a plan to approve the purchase of a cell site simulator, also known as a Stingray. This device can be used to capture your voice calls and your SMSs and your data plan information, all that sort of thing. It can be used to do all of that. So basically, if you browse a website on your mobile data plan, they collect that. If you make a phone call to your mom, they collect that. You send a text message to your girlfriend, they collect that. The secretive surveillance devices can be used to determine a phone's location, but they can also intercept calls and text messages. During the act of locating a phone, Stingrays also sweep up information about nearby phones, not just the target phone. Earlier this year, Ars Technica reported on how the FBI is actively trying to prevent disclosure of how these devices are used in local jurisdictions across America because they're forcing local police departments to sign a non-disclosure agreement, you see. So they're forcing these departments to sign a non-disclosure agreement or else they don't get the Stingray devices. So that does not act in the favor of the people at all. The move by the county council, I suppose, happening in one of the primary counties in Silicon Valley, marks an unusual occasion that a local government has turned away from federal funds that would be used to acquire such a device. The device was approved initially during a February 24th, 2015 meeting, despite a testy exchange between the Santa Clara Sheriff's Office and Supervisor Joe Samitian, a former state senator with a penchant for an interest in privacy issues. Samitian's office didn't immediately respond to ours' request for comment. James Williams, the deputy county executive, wrote in a Tuesday letter to his boss, Jeffrey Smith, saying, after negotiations regarding contract terms, including business and legal issues, the county and Harris have been unable to reach agreement on a contract for the purchase of the system. Accordingly, the system will not be purchased at this time. The Harris Corporation is the contractor that gives away these Stingray devices for a very hefty fine. The Harris Corporation is a Florida-based defense contractor that's in the manufacture of the device, produced under the Stingray trademark. As the dominant maker of cell site simulators, Stingray has also become the generic name for this class of devices. Both the FBI and the Harris Corporation have previously declined to answer our Seneca's specific questions. Smith told ours that Harris wanted to impose overly strict restrictions as to what could be disclosed to the public records requests. So the Harris Corporation does not want any information about these cell site simulators to be disclosed. They would prefer it if you didn't know about them at all. In fact, they've been known to drop court cases in order to cease disclosure of the usage of these devices. So it's imperative for them to stop you from knowing about cell site simulators. What happened was, he says, we were in negotiations with Harris and we couldn't get them to agree to even the most basic criteria we have in terms of being responsive to public records requests, he said. After many hours of back and forth, it became clear that we weren't going to consent to a contract in an attempt to keep everything secret and non-discoverable, and that's not something we could live with as a public agency. The negotiations are going to be terminated, and the grant money will go to other purposes. He has said that the FBI was not involved in the discussions, and that Santa Clara County did not even get to the stage of the onerous non-disclosure agreement on the lines of a previously published one revealed in a court case in Erie County, New York. In that case, a very rare unredacted form, it's the only time I've ever seen one, demonstrated the full extent of the FBI's attempt, to quash public disclosure of Stingray information. The most egregious example from the document showed that the FBI would prefer to drop a criminal case in order to protect secrecy surrounding the Stingray. So they want to keep this information out of the earshot of the public, which means that the public can't be trusted with certain information. Now, if the public can't be trusted with information which the feds have, the feds probably shouldn't have that information, because it seems a lot of the time if the feds have certain information that they don't want the public to know, then it's probably something that's going to be used against the public, be it funds that go towards drug cartels in Mexico, or funds that go towards the funding of different rebel groups over in the Balkans or in the Middle East that are actually supposed to be technically against the United States interests. They just don't want you to know about a lot of the things which they do. Now, this includes the usage of stingrays. They're trying to keep this out of the public eye as much as they can, and the media is all too happy to oblige in that effort. Either they don't know about it, they're willfully ignorant about the usage of stingrays, or somebody in some office somewhere asks the executives over at the different cable news industries to simply not discuss stingray. Please don't talk about stingray, because if you do, you might be helping out terrorists. So these different agencies are all too happy to oblige. Fortunately, I've never gotten a call from anyone in the federals, the federales. I've never gotten a call from any of the federales, although they have come to my house before. Never gotten a phone call from them, so I am under no obligation to not discuss Stingray devices. And because the FBI doesn't want you to know about them, I want you to know about them. The best I can get into, says the city councilman, the best I can get into is that Harris has been convinced by somebody, maybe by themselves, that federal law prohibits them from saying anything to anybody about their technology unless that person has a badge or is a criminal investigation in the criminal justice system, Smith added. So the Harris Corporation will not tell you anything about Stingray unless you are one of the privileged few, or maybe privileged too many, who is a federal law enforcement officer or a state or local law enforcement officer. So he says, if we're buying this as civilians, we would have to guarantee we would never tell anybody that it was being bought. It was a little on the silly side. They're claiming that everybody is, or rather everything is a trade secret. But the reality is that the public is quite well aware that this is a wireless wiretapping device and it's not a secret. I can't understand where they're coming from. So they're wanting you to not know about these Stingray devices? Why are they trying to keep this so secret? Is it because mass disclosure of the usage of stingrays would bring about some sort of mass exodus of faith from the federal system? I kind of don't think so, because it seems that no matter what they do, there's always going to be this element of the populace who's going to put their entire unquestioning faith in the federal government, no matter what. Because after all, everything they do is for national security purposes. I actually, I peruse the internet quite often. I'm always online. Ask anybody who works with me in the office here. I'm always on the internet. And I like to read comments on news articles a lot. And there was one I was reading for Ars Technica, not for Ars Technica, pardon me. It was on one of the sites that Drudge Report linked to. I don't recall which one it was right now. I'll have to go back and check. But somebody was commenting on how some of these things we just shouldn't know about. Oh, I remember. It was National Reconnaissance Agency satellite program that it was a video that had been disclosed, and I was watching it on YouTube. And one of the commenters said that, some of these things we just shouldn't know about. Well, hold on there. I want to know about basically everything. Total informational awareness is basically my end goal in life. I want to get to that ascended point where I know everything. And I kind of already do know everything, but I'm kidding. I want to get to that point where I know a lot of stuff about different federal projects. And there's actually people out there who say that we just shouldn't know about this stuff, because if we know about it, then terrorists could know about it or something. It's always that thing where, man, I shouldn't know about this because I'm a bad person. You don't trust yourself with information? Civil liberties and legal experts hope that the newfound scrutiny that has come to various cities around the country, including Tacoma, Washington, and Erie County, New York, are beginning to reach those in government, saying we want more scrutiny of these deals and the strings that are attached to them. He says, I'm hopeful that more counties will negotiate more aggressively. This is Brian Osley, a former federal judge who is now a law professor at Indiana Tech, to Ars Technica. So we have this fortunate occurrence where these different technology websites and such, tech news websites, are talking about Stingray. Otherwise, I wouldn't know about them. There's a lot of different agencies now, news agencies, that are willing to talk about Stingray. In fact, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal not too long ago about Stingray devices. And that's a relatively mainstream news source. I wouldn't put them up there with like Fox, but they are relatively mainstream. So we have that going for us. We, the populace, have that going for us, where at least there's somebody out there who's willing to put out stories about it, who's not a guy who's on AM radio, who's not a guy who's on a very regional news outlet. Why isn't Stingray on Fox News? Why isn't Stingray on CNN? Why isn't it on MSNBC? Why isn't it on all these different news agencies? Why isn't it on HLN? Why isn't this being talked about? Is there somebody out there who's asking them to please not talk about Stingray? Really, why aren't Stingray devices being talked about on Fox? Right now on Fox News, we have it on the cable TV right in front of me. Why isn't somebody coming out and saying the feds are spying on our cell phones? Nobody's willing to talk about this, even though it's a matter of public knowledge. People should be knowing about this. It shouldn't be delegated to the crazies who are on their late night rants on radio. It shouldn't be delegated to that. It should be something that everyone knows about. Everyone needs to know about this. But for some reason, this information is willfully being withheld from us. Why? What's the reasoning here? What's the logic here? Well, actually, it's non-logic. That's what it is. This is Hot News Talk Radio.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode. What kind of fool do you think I am? You think I know nothing of
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
When my brother and I opened our first Jets Pizza, we believed if we made the best pizza, customers would find us. So we made fresh dough each day, used fresh toppings, and premium mozzarella cheese. 300 plus stores later, we still do.
Try Jet's famous 8-corner pizza with premium mozzarella cheese and one topping, now just $11.99 for a limited time only. Jet's Pizza, the best pizza in town. 3600 Hickson Pike.
Life is short. Eat better pizza.
Let's get Jets.
If you have the DTs, the shakes, because your phone is on the fritz, you have nomophobia. You need help. Your telecom doctor is in. Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall. Cell Surgeon yanks open the ribcage of your phone, pries out the dead heart, and puts in the beating life that you lead on your cell phone. Broken screen, phone not charging, water damage, battery given out? Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall next Old Chicago Pizza. Check us out on Facebook. Open Sunday. Cell Surgeon. We bring your phone back to life.
You do not have to be living with constant pain. You need to make the choice today to enjoy a revitalized body. You deserve to live a better pain-free life. And Dr. Ross can help. At Ross Chiropractic, failure is not an option. For over 40 years, Dr. Ross, a graduate of the prestigious Palmer College of Chiropractic, prided himself in helping and healing. The Ross method of chiropractic care is unique in developing a treatment designed just for you. And Ross Chiropractic makes this promise to you. If he believes that he can't help relieve your pain, he will guide you to another health practitioner to assist you. Feel better now. You owe it to yourself. You really do. Call Dr. Ross now at 954-9591. That's 954-9591. And visit Dr. Ross at 7405 Shaliford Road, Suite 320. Ross Chiropractic, helping your body heal itself. Because when your spine's in line, you will feel fine. Call 954-9591. That's 954-9591 for Ross Chiropractic.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection, loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
Are you tired of working in corporate America, or have you recently lost your job and would like to consider owning your own business? If you are, please call me, as I can help you look at franchises or business opportunities that fit you, the economy that we're in, and the type of businesses that are right in the greater Chattanooga area. After I help my clients find the right opportunity, I also help them find the best way to finance the business, including paying yourself through the startup phase. If you would like to learn more about opportunities that may be right for you, please call me for a free assessment. My name is Bruce Krebs at the Entrepreneur Source. Phone number is 423-875-5621.
Pure, honest, fair, and respect. Just some words that come to mind when you think about how you want to be treated. And that's how you're treated at Rivermont Pure. Rivermont Pure in Rivermont, Chattanooga. Serving your vehicle needs for over 30 years.
Now that's a long time.
Owner-operators Charlie and Tommy always put your needs first. Yeah, go ahead. Get an estimate from one of those big guy impersonal car repair chains.
No way.
Then bring it to Tommy and Charlie at Rivermont Pure. Chances are they'll beat their price and get your vehicle back on the road faster than you can say,
our customers come first. Hi, this is Charlie.
And I'm Tommy, owners of Rivermont Pure. We're here to serve you.
Rivermont Pure, the auto repair guys. Featuring ethanol-free fuel. Located across from Rivermont Elementary on Hickson Pike. Rivermont, Chattanooga. Rivermont Pure.
Rivermont Pure, that's where I've always gone to get my car serviced. My husband and I trust Charlie and Tommy. They always treat us right and give us a fair price. And they get the job done right the first time. Thank you, Rivermont Pure.
Call 485-3375. That's 485-3375.
Every Tuesday at 11 a.m. on Hot News Talk Radio, join Real Estate U for an hour of information, guests, and new ideas about the dynamic Chattanooga real estate investment market. Real Estate U every Tuesday at 11 a.m. here on Hot News Talk Radio.
If the South would have won, we'd have had it made. I'd probably run for president of the Southern states. The day Elvis passed away would be our national holiday. If the South would have won, we'd have had it made.
NASCAR, Laura Ingram, Dennis Miller, David Toulis, Coast to Coast AM, and CBS Radio News. Chattanooga's news, talk, and sports leader.
News Talk 1240.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
WSDT Saudi Daisy, Chattanooga.
CBS News, I'm Peter King. A federal appeals court says the National Security Agency went further than the Patriot Act allows in collecting reams of data on Americans' phone calls. The judges say this is a good time for a new congressional debate on privacy. CBS News correspondent Stephen Portnoy says they're already talking about it.
The section of the Patriot Act that the NSA has relied on all these years for metadata collection expires at the end of the month. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell proposes extending the NSA's authority through 2020.
They're not running rogue out there. The NSA is overseeing
by the legislative, executive, and judicial branches of our government.
A bipartisan bill in the House would strip the NSA of its authority to collect bulk phone records, but Senate Leader McConnell says that bill would make the country more vulnerable. Stephen Portnoy, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
Parts of the southern plains are expecting more rough weather while cleaning up from yesterday's storms. The National Weather Service says more than 50 tornadoes were reported. The Oklahoma City area hardest hit, with at least 12 injuries, 1 death, and heavy property damage. Oklahoma Governor Mary Fallin has declared a state of emergency. She's warning people to stay off the roads if more storms approach.
People traveling and getting stuck on the turnpikes, on the highways, that may get jammed up with traffic, and then you're caught in the middle of a storm that's coming through the area and you can't move your car.
From Riyadh, the U.S. and Saudi Arabia have proposed a 5-day humanitarian ceasefire in Yemen. Secretary of State John Kerry says there's more to be worked out.
No bombing, no shooting, no movement or repositioning of troops to achieve military advantage.
Hundreds of civilians have been killed since a Saudi-led coalition began air raids on the Iranian allied militia back in March. Medical screening can be very effective, but health officials are concerned that fewer Americans are being checked for serious diseases.
Screening rates for breast, cervical, and colorectal cancers have either fallen behind previous rates or have shown no improvement at all. The CDC's Dr. Sarah Sabatino.
Many people are not being screened as recommended, and we know that these screening tests are effective in reducing deaths from these cancers and saving lives.
The CDC reports about 1 in 5 women reported that they were not up to date on their screening for cervical cancer. About 1 in 4 are in need of a mammogram. And when it comes to colorectal cancer, 2 in 5 adults admit that they need to be screened. Sabrina Cupid for CBS News, Atlanta.
New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft says despite the findings of the NFL Deflategate report, his team hasn't done anything wrong. Now Tom Brady's camp is speaking out. CBS's Steve Futterman.
Tom Brady still has not said a thing, but his agent today issued a statement suggesting his client was caught up in a sting operation set up by the NFL. In the statement, Don Yee accuses investigators of reaching a conclusion first, then determining what he calls the so-called facts. He says the report omits key facts and says it was not an independent investigation.
The Dow is up 127 points. This is CBS News.
When I grow up, I want to be a new pair of blue jeans.
When I grow up, I want to be a kid's first computer.
When I grow up, I want to be a glass countertop in a new home.
When I grow up, I want to be a kid's best birthday present.
When I grow up, I want to be a football stadium.
When I grow up, I want to be a warm fleece on a cold day.
When I grow up, I want to be a fancy backsplash.
I want to be a bike that races around the country. When I grow up, I want to be a bench on a forest trail. I want to be a rocking chair on a sunny porch. I want to be a skyscraper.
I want to be When I grow up, I don't want to be a piece of garbage. And if you recycle me, I won't be.
Give your garbage another life. Recycle. Learn how at iwanttoberecycled.org. A public service advertisement brought to you by Keep America Beautiful and the Ad Council.
Russia's getting ready for a big celebration, but not all has gone according to plan. Here's CBS's Dave Barrett.
They practiced for a parade in Moscow's Red Square today, the parade to mark 70 years since the end of World War II in Europe. That takes place Saturday, as Russian TV showed. A brand new Russian Armata T-14 tank rumbled into view and stopped. The driver raised a red flag, and the tank just sat there for about 15 minutes. Then it got into gear and rumbled off as the PA announcer said the stop was planned to show how a tank could be evacuated. Parade watchers laughed at that. Dave Barrett, CBS News.
A Florida couple has been arrested for rewarding their daughters with cocaine and marijuana in return for the girls going to school and doing their chores. The mother told sheriff's deputies she smoked pot with the daughters. Her father snorted cocaine with them and one girl's boyfriend. The police report says the mother works in a pediatrician's office. I'm Peter King, CBS News.
By 2025.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Live from Chattanooga.